Those were the two like big alarm bells that are like ding, 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 ding. Like that probably those two things are responsible for like a vast majority of desire issues, right?
Yes.
And not everything.
Yeah.
I mean, there were so many, there's sleep and there were so many different factors that played into it depending on like what your individual circumstances were. But I think those two were like, she kept saying stress and hormones, stress and hormones. And yeah, those were huge takeaways. So what does that mean? Do you know what I mean? And how do you but it makes perfect sense, Liz. Like because when you
Does.
go back to your 20s, whenever, in those days, it, there weren't as many stakes in life. You didn't have kids and
Mhm.
you had a job and school and whatever, but there wasn't as much at stake. And there wasn't, you get to this point in life, especially as women, where like you potentially have the career, you have the kids, you have a husband, you have like friends, you have so much coming at you. Maybe you're on boards, maybe you're doing this, that like it's so much is being asked of a person. Like, how do you find the time or the energy or the
Welcome to
desire?
Spark Me, a podcast for women who know life is just getting interesting.
Each week, we spark great conversations, share lived experiences, real resources, and tap into the collective wisdom that comes from learning together.
If you're looking for connection, not perfection, fresh ideas, and a community where you truly belong,
Then pull up a chair. You're in the right place. Welcome to Spark Me.
well, hi there, Michelle. How are you?
Liz, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I am good. Well, today I think we're going to unpack a really interesting episode with Dr. Erin Murphy Ross last week.
That episode was a lot of fun and very informative.
Yes, in many ways.
Yes. I was going to say we went deep, but then I thought,
Hmm. There are so many
there's so
like
many infinite
puns that could
systems. Is that what
yeah.
they're
Yeah, but it actually was. I mean, while it's a like it brings out the 12-year-old in all of us
yes.
talking about sex. The truth of the matter is that her insights, her knowledge base really got me thinking. I mean, about things I'd never thought about as far as who your um, intimacy and sexual role models are. Wow.
I like that just stuck in my head, like, what? And why would you need to know that? But then it started to make perfect sense. And then, it makes you
Yeah.
think. And then you're like, wait a minute, with now it's starting to make sense.
I
Um,
know.
it,
I know.
it was so cool how she's like, when she starts working with people, they have to go back first to understand the past
Mhm.
before they can get to maybe what's happening now. It was so rich. Like there was so much stuff to talk about and so much to unpack in that episode. I don't know about you, Liz, but I have heard a lot about it. Like,
I have too. I
yeah,
mean, truthfully, and honestly, it was probably one of our most listened to episodes in the early days, and that probably says a lot right there. That so many people tuned in.
yeah.
It is a topic that really like connected with people and resonated, and something that nobody's talking about.
Nobody's talking about, and it needs to. And it's clearly something that is under the surface that impacts a lot of people. And she just her demeanor and how warm she was and how friendly and how instantly she like you can tell if you worked with her, she would make you feel like pump the brakes,
Mhm.
everything is fine. I love how she said we don't say normal, it's like or was tip like look, whatever it is for you, that's okay. That's what it is. And there's no such thing as it has to be this, you have to be having sex this many times a week to be, normal or what's typical. She's like, it's what is working for you. I feel like she probably brings great like comfort and relief to couples, because there's so much pressure
Totally.
out there and so many mixed stories and messages about what intimacy and sex is and is supposed to be. And I think it's just upside down.
Well, and I also think too that at least this was something that I took away. So I can only speak for myself, but my guess is others would take it away too. In my mind, for whatever reason, sexual attraction was frozen in time to when I was like 22 years old. Right? So, like, what sex would be like is still, that's the yardstick that I'm comparing it to, and no pun intended. and seriously though, like, it just never occurred to me that, as we age, we need to reset our mindset as far as what our expectations are, what we're looking for, and and really where we all are in our lives. So
Yeah.
that was a big takeaway. And another big takeaway for me that really got me thinking was how much of an impact stress and hormones plays into this.
Those were the 2, like, big alarm bells that are like, "Ding, ding, 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 ding," like, that probably those 2 things are responsible for, like, a vast majority of desire issues, right?
Yes.
And not everything.
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many there's sleep and there were so many different factors that played into it depending on, like, what your individual circumstances were, but I think those 2 were, like she kept saying stress and hormones, and yeah, those were huge takeaways. So what does that mean? Do you know what I mean? And how do you but it makes perfect sense, Liz. Like, because
Does.
you go back to your 20s, whenever, in those days, it, there weren't as many stakes in life. You didn't have kids and
Mhm.
you had a job and school and whatever, but there wasn't as much at stake. And there wasn't, you get to this point in life, especially as women, where like you potentially have the career, you have the kids, you have a husband, you have like friends, you have so much coming at you. Maybe you're on boards, maybe you're doing this, that, like, it's so much is being asked of a person. Like, how do you find the time or the energy
Yeah.
or the
The
desire?
desire. I mean, to rev it up. I mean, I think that that is a real issue.
Yeah.
And the other thing on the hormone side, when she talked about that, and we'll get into this next week with our guest as well, which we'll talk about. But when she said that we should be testing our hormones even in our 20s and 30s,
Yeah.
my I was like blown away by that. And our next guest said the same thing. So
Yeah.
uh,
I think hormones keeps coming up, right? It's like
yeah,
it's on a big cycle here. Like it's like, why have we ignored them for so long? Right? Like, and it makes perfect sense. You know what hit me too? The other big takeaway was like, why why is this taking so long for women's sexual health to really come into the zeitgeist and to come into having conversations about it? And why are we just talking about hormones now? Why don't we have something to help women's desire like men have, right? Like,
yeah,
um, and like I just it's just so I'm just so happy, I guess, like that we are talking about it now and we can say like these are things that are impacting it because we are sexual creatures. We're like we should enjoy this thing that we've been given as like part of our um ability to live and to enjoy life, and this gift we have of life. And this is a big part of it. So as women, I feel like if your desire is low, even when you're younger, you might not even realize, you might just think that's the way I am, right?
right.
You might not think that there's something at play there.
Physical,
Yeah.
right? That there's something going on with your hormone levels,
Yeah.
and so that's why you're not in the mood, or feeling that. And when you just mentioned about women's health issues, so this is something that like super annoying to me and so typical at the same time. And I was having this conversation with my 91-year-old father because of course I have no filter whatsoever. And so I just tell him flat out, like, this is a fact of life. So I am on bioidentical hormone therapy. And I started it a few months ago, like almost a year ago. I know, I guess 8 months ago. Changed my life. Like, literally went back to feeling like my old self again. And really, it's fantastic. course, you should consult your doctor. Not it's not for everybody, but for me, it worked. So I go to the pharmacy the other day to pick up my estrogen patch, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we don't have any." I'm like, "What do you mean you don't have any?" She said, "We've been sold out for like 3 weeks." And I said, "Well, when are you going to get them?" And she said, "I don't know." And I said, "Well, should I go to another pharmacy?" And she said, "Well, you can, but they're sold out all across the country." So here's the thing, okay? So all of a sudden, women are now embracing feeling empowered to deal with their health issues in the second chapter of life,
Yeah.
and 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 there are no supplies to support the demand. So, like, I went into a research deep dive on this. There are only two pharmaceutical companies in the world that make estrogen, bioidentical estrogen patches. And so they've been having supply chain issues for a couple of years now because all of a sudden women are talking to their doctors. Doctors are approving it. The FDA came out and said we were wrong. There is not a higher incidence of breast cancer if you take bioidentical hormone therapy, and 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 the manufacturers are slow to catch up. So the reason why I bring that up is because, and I could be corrected, so our male listeners should correct me if I'm wrong, but I have never heard about a Viagra shortage. I'm just saying. Once
Because if
again.
there is, then you can just go to Cialis or any 5 other, different
Exactly.
options, you know? Uh,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So I just, there's so much, both like mentally and physically around this topic of desire and sex. Hormones are just one piece of a really big puzzle. But I did find that very fascinating that both our guests, last week and this next week, are talking about being really on top of what your hormone levels are so that when it's tipping into an area where it's a physical issue less than more than a mental issue.
Yeah, and that's so important to know because, like, it impacts everything. So I had never thought of that, and I know that, like, I'm like, okay, so now I have to start thinking of like who do I go to talk about that? Like, it opens up a whole new like, is there
Yeah,
anybody in the area that does this? And like because it's definitely on my list of like I've got to. Not that I feel like anything's wrong, but like maybe I don't even know, right? Like
that's the thing. I
you
didn't think there was anything wrong. I had no idea this was hormone related.
yeah.
Uh,
What you're saying bioidentical hormone therapy? What is that exactly?
So rather than getting like actual estrogen, you're getting something that is it's a similar to estrogen, and that reduces like the potential for like cancer and stuff like that. So that's what they're recommending with hormone replacement therapy, that you're using a biosimilar, bioidentical hormone. And I will tell you that for me, when I was, sort of like, okay, well, there's something going on here beyond just, I'm tired all the time, and and I just, they're having anxiety, which I'd never had before. There's just a whole bunch of symptoms that I had no idea were related to the drop off in my hormones. So I read this book by Mary Claire Haver called "The New Menopause," and it was a very good read. I would highly recommend it to anybody. Um, but at the back of the book, she lists by state the menopause specialists. So
Oh,
you can look in at the back of that book for the state of Pennsylvania, if you're in Pennsylvania, and find a doctor.
is that how
Um,
you found someone?
it is. It
Okay.
is.
Wow, okay, that's great. Because I was actually with a sister of mine today, and I was like, "Yeah, I don't even know where to start the search," you know?
Yeah.
And then I'm like,
Yeah.
and I actually said, "I'm gonna talk to Liz." This is
She
me too.
talked about it all the time.
The other
She
thing,
must
like,
know.
because I was, like, researching it a little bit and because you keep hearing about estrogen, but I'm always surprised to hear the role that testosterone plays in it. Because you think of that
Ugh,
I think of that as a male,
yeah,
male hormone, like, it can't affect women, but it massively plays into women's sexual desire, you know?
it
Um
absolutely does. And it I mean, all of these hormones, it's such a interesting so, the 3 that I'm, most focused on are testosterone, progesterone, and, estrogen. And all 3 of them play such an important role in whether you're getting sleep, like uninterrupted sleep. Um, when I started on the hormone replacement therapy, I started dreaming again. I hadn't even realized that I had stopped dreaming, but all of a sudden I have like the most like incredible dreams, and I'm like and I look it up. Yep, that is part of like being in balance with your hormones. I mean, you really we're going to talk to Adrienne Cotton, a menopause specialist, next week, so we'll get into this a little bit deeper next week. But there is so much here. I have a feeling we'll have a couple of episodes on this topic.
Yeah, and then the other thing, because it's something I've heard a lot is, like, pain. Pain is something and I
Mhm.
loved when she said, "If you're having pain, stop. Don't
Yeah,
don't train your brain that that's what sex is or you'll just not want it." And then, you can, like, handle that while you, like, do other stuff. But, like
yeah,
but that you have to handle that because it's there's things you can do, right? From whether it's estrogen or whether it's, she talked about pelvic floor, specialists, right?
pelvic floor, right?
Yeah,
Hmm.
and, or just lubricating better, like, there was just but my takeaway was there are ways to address the pain, and it's
Yeah.
something that you can talk to your doctor about, or, like, quite frankly, once you know these things, you can also research them, and she said that, right? Like, you can go and research them, there's podcasts, there's AI, there's Google, but you should really find somebody who can really talk to about this stuff and who's sort of expert in it. But the hopeful part of that is, like, but there are answers, right? That it's
Mhm.
not you haven't just because it hurts, you don't have to stop, right? Or just kind of throw up your hands and say it's never going to be better. It can be, right?
Yeah, and it's not you, and it's very common,
It's very
and,
common.
like, a lot of people are experiencing it, and I just wanna underscore what you said at the very beginning. It was such a great advice from, Dr. Ross, that you want to stop having painful bad sex, because if you continue to have it, you're training your brain that that's what sex is.
Yeah.
Right?
So agree.
And it was, I mean, when she said that, that was like a light bulb moment for me, that it's like almost a Pavlovian response.
Yeah.
Um, and uh, and I just found that fascinating because it never occurred to me.
No. No. And I think, um that the sleep part of it was also interesting. Sleep is another thing that comes up as sort of a solution to so many things.
Oh,
Kind of like the
yeah,
hormones,
and it's
right?
so hard to hack your sleep. Do you get a good night's sleep?
Nah, well, some of that's self-inflicted. But, uh, like, I'll fall asleep I'll be so exhausted, I'll fall asleep, like, fully dressed, and then I wake up at 2 in the morning, and I, like, have to get up and change, and then I'm awake, and then you've gotten my 2 AM emails and texts.
I have. I I have gotten them at 6 a.m. when a normal person gets up in the morning.
So I think, I'm a late nighter. If I could go to bed late and sleep in a little bit, if the world would work a little bit more on my schedule, it'd be great. But, there's nothing like a good night's sleep. But even so, I think, and this happened when I was younger too. Usually at some point during the night, I got to get up, you know, for other reasons. And, like, once you're
Yeah.
up, it's kind of like, okay, I'm up for a little bit. And then if you're stressed, which is almost all the time, if you're like a woman who has
Mhm.
kids and, a job and, it's really hard to go back to sleep once the wheels start spinning, right? I think I'm sure I'm speaking to many, many, not just women, men out there who like if you get woken up for whatever reason, like you were lightly sleeping, you have to go to the bathroom, whatever it is, in the middle of the night, once you're up and your head, like all of a sudden those problems seem 1,000 times bigger. And like,
Mhm.
you're in fight or flight and your head's like going, going, going with the 10,000 things you have to do the next day. It seems like I'm never going to get them all done. Um, and I think there's like something to that. And, we'll have to do an episode on sleep, Liz, this is what because again, it comes up. It came up this past week. It's coming up next week. Like that sleep is such an important part of our health and well being, sexual health, mental health, like physical health. It's just,
Mhm.
it's where regeneration happens. It's like so much important stuff happens in that sleep and to get the deep.
It's foundational. I mean, sleep is truly foundational, and everything. If you don't have a good night's sleep and you're tired and punchy, everything sort of feeds off of that, right? You're never gonna be as sharp. You're never gonna be as creative. You're just not gonna be on your game
Yeah.
without that foundation of a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
Uh, you should try Insight Timer, by the way. Have you ever heard of Insight Timer?
I'm
Um,
reading. What does that mean?
Insight Timer is a meditation app that
Okay.
you can load onto your phone, and they have hundreds, probably thousands of meditations on there from a variety of teachers, and you can choose like, hey, I need a meditation to put me to sleep that. Is a Zen garden focused sleep meditation, or I need a meditation that puts me to sleep that's only 10 minutes long, or whatever it might be. But there are lots of categories in there.
Yeah.
And so if you wake up in the middle of the night, that is one hack to put yourself back to sleep in a restful way.
So I did learn that I have to listen to something and I don't want to watch TV because if I get into it, I did learn that I have to listen to something to fall asleep. And my hack is not meditation. Neil deGrasse Tyson, Star Talk. My meditation, and I love it so much. Not because
Oh
it's
my gosh, that's so
fun.
funny.
I'm like really into it, and I go to sleep thinking of the cosmos and space and black holes and dark energy, dark matter, and like it just like makes me happy, and I fall asleep.
It calms you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it makes me think life is so much bigger than me, and like this massive mystery that we have to unpack and unfold, and it's just it makes me feel small and big and important and tiny and important and unimportant at the same time, right?
I
And
love it.
so, yeah, so
I
that's
love
my
it.
kind of just puts me right off. Um, yeah. So that's one. But yes, listening to a podcast or a meditation is something that definitely I've learned is what gets me to go back to sleep once I'm done
Yeah.
texting you. But that
Hey, back to Erin though. Like one thing that and I'm just curious to get your feedback on this. I was thinking about this after the episode. When she was talking about how much, like, when you learn about sex, how your family talks about sex or anatomy and different things like that, that really influences you later in life, right? When you're a young adult or you're, a kid and you're seeing these things, how that influences you. And I had read years ago, or not years ago, I had read not that long ago, truthfully, that um, internet porn among kids is a huge thing. And so, I'm not a mom, you're a mom, and you have boys. I'm just curious. Um, do you think that that is going to be like really impactful for how it's training young people if they're watching any internet porn, how that's training them with what sex would be like, sex looks like, sex should,
it's
feel
a
like.
big problem, Liz. I think it's a big problem out there, especially for like young men who like at some point stop even trying with like, like why do I need women when I've got this internet world that I can go to and I don't have to worry
Mhm.
about the rejection, and I don't have to worry about this stuff. And I had conversations with my kids since they were very young about like, that's not real. This is
Mhm.
not, yeah, I compare it to like, wrestling versus WWF or
Yeah,
like I'm like, look, there's some
yeah,
things that are for entertainment and for like, to
right,
like people, it's really not what real love and intimacy is supposed to be like.
and
It's not
connect,
the
yeah,
modeling of it, and it's not what women like. Like
right,
the women are pretending in those movies or whatever they are. And it's hard because you've got to monitor the phones so closely. And it's not just the phone, it can be the TV, it could be like there's so many places where there's screens, and it's a lot, and you have to really have the conversations from when they're young. And it's like constantly trying to keep ahead of it, right? Like,
yeah,
but I know it's a problem. I hear Scott Galloway talking about it a lot. An
mhm,
internet influencer who, I think is pretty smart and interesting, and he talks about the plight of young men right now, and porn is a big part of that plight. Um, so yeah, I think that's doing damage. I think it's doing big damage. He's not the only one. I've heard it come up on several podcasts where men are saying that it is a big problem with young men right now. And I think even more so as AI gets better and more interesting and easier accessible and feels more realistic and can talk to you,
yeah,
in ways that like really are very persuasive. And yeah,
right,
we're only at the tip of that iceberg. But so yeah, I think porn is a problem. And I think the other thing we kind of touched on, um, and it's hard because this is a sensitive topic for a lot of people, but I think religion plays a big role in
yeah,
people's early thoughts and experience and views of sex and sexuality. And I think that's something that parents have to manage because, I went through Catholic grade school and the nuns, they had
mhm.
an opinion, right?
Yeah,
I know, really, like it was like, this is not good. This is
right,
like, it's a shameful thing, right? So I think religion plays a role, and you have to watch that role because you don't want your kids you want to have that healthy, it's finding that fine line that like where you can say, this is a beautiful, good thing at this point. Maybe not
right,
here. Like not here, it's not
yeah,
the right
exactly,
but when you're mature and you find the right person and you want it to make sure it's something that's beautiful and wonderful and you want to experience, but like you have to be ready for it. And so like sometimes to keep kids from away from it at the younger age, like let's scare them, like let's make it
yeah.
terrifying and guilt ridden and like, and so I think you grow up with these really unhealthy
Right, you it informs your adulthood if that's what you're, learning in childhood.
and I can only speak to where I grew up in, which was the Catholic Church.
Sure,
I'm sure it exists in
sure.
other, places, but, um, so I think that has an influence. I think your family dynamic has an influence. I think, as she said, watching your parents and what their relationship was like as there's so many things, right? God
Yeah,
forbid, like so many people have experienced some sort of, horrible
sexual
childhood
trauma. Yeah,
trauma, like, and that's it's so common, right?
yeah,
It's so
it really is.
and that I'm sure informs things too, or like just a bad first experience or whatever it might be, just I
Mhm.
just think there's so much around it and it's a little taboo still, right? Like it's hard to talk about. I think sometimes it's really hard for parents to talk to their kids about. I mean, I don't know how many eye rolls I got when I was mom, we know, mom, we know. No, no, no.
I know,
But I'm gonna
I
lock this
know.
door and sit down and talk to you about it anyway, Like so, yeah, I think there's so much before you get to that relationship, right? That like you're already
Right,
carrying with you. And then you get there and like then so many more things, right? Like just that the expectations of society. Like you think I think it's very common to think, am I normal? Like, but
right.
that's what TV says it's supposed to be like, or guys think I watch porn and that's what it's supposed to be like, right? So I think that there's
Mhm.
all this like misinformation or set up expectation, right? That this is, you're supposed to orgasm at the same time, and
Right.
it's like
Exactly.
it's gonna be at the same time, and it's gonna be the penetration kind, and
It's
it's
gonna be mind blowing.
right. It's gonna be mind blowing. It's gonna be off the charts. So I just think there's just so much, right? That
Mhm.
puts a lot of pressure on it, and then pack the stress on, pack the hormones on, pack lack of sleep, pack it all on, and sometimes you wonder, like, God, anybody even have a chance, right?
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly.
But I
And while we talked a lot of, we did talk a lot about sex, I also wanna, you know, also acknowledge that so much of what we talked about too, and what Erin focuses on, is intimacy and desire and connection.
yeah,
So sex is just a component of all of that,
yep,
but it's really comes to intimacy and connection, I would say.
I think that's at the base of it all. I think if you
Mhm,
see the couples that, you know and I don't know what their sex lives are, but you see couples that really work well together, they have that,
mhm.
they have a really good
They're tuned in.
they're really
Y
tuned in, very respectful usually towards each other, very like, there's just a way about them and a thing about them that you're like, "Yeah, that's pretty healthy," right? Like,
Yeah, exactly,
yeah, right? Um,
exactly.
it's so I think there's a lot to that, and, you said it too, I think a lot of women and she said it can change sometimes, but, like, the acts of service or the like, what's your love language and how that
Mhm.
can change after you have kids or, certain times of life. It goes from, gifts or whatever to like
Yeah.
to acts of service to someone. I don't know all the 4 languages, but I thought that was interesting too, because that can really, impact things. There's a lot. There is so much there, but she
I think the biggest takeaway that I mean, like, overarching the whole thing, is that your life evolves,
yeah.
right? So what you wanted when you were 20 may not be what you want at 30. It may not be what you want at 40, 50, 70. We even talked about, sex, at much older age. I'm very impressed with your grandparents. And so
What are you talking about my nana?
yeah.
And I don't think I told that story, but, like, yeah, it happens at all ages. It
At
really
all
does.
ages. But regardless, I mean, the point is that, you you as a being, evolve your whole life. And so we need to be thoughtful in our sexual being and our, desire, that that's evolving too. And what we need from our partners changes over time and over years. And so I thought that that was very much like the overarching theme, is just to be very intentional,
Yeah,
um, about, what you need, and embrace, and your empowerment as far as, voicing that, and then, being thoughtful and cognizant of your partner's needs, and trying to meet them there. So that was my takeaway.
it's a great takeaway. I think, those are all amazing things to have gotten from it. I feel like for me, like I got so much out of it and I want to dive deeper into certain areas. And so what I want to ask the listeners and the audience is um what is there a certain area that if we had Erin back as a guest again, because I think there's more ground to cover there, right?
Yeah.
What particular area, like, would because I feel like we covered a lot from sexual debuts to, like, stress to learning how to talk about things to carrying stuff from your youth to, like, you and your partner and how you, like, interact with each other and the intimacy. Like, we covered a lot of ground, intentionally, right? We just wanted to,
Mhm.
like, hit a lot of things. But we could deep dive into areas, right? And really get into whether it's intimacy or, love languages or whether it's into stress and hormones. Um, what do people want to hear more about? Right? Like, is there an area that like please email us at Spark Me Podcast
Podcast.
@gmail.com. You always save me there. Right? And like, let us know, or catch us, text us, call us, whatever. Just let us know where you think if we had Erin back, what would you want what piqued your interest?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Michelle, this was a great episode, and I hope people go back and listen to it because frankly, there's a lot to uncover there. And I think that every person that listens to it will get a lot out of it.
Yeah.
And then we've got next week, we have another episode with an expert out of the Washington, D.C. area. Her name is Adrienne Cotton. She's a menopause specialist. That is going to be a really terrific
That's
episode.
awesome. Yeah. I can't wait to tell everyone hears that one too. That's
So, well, with that being said, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to talking with you in the next week.
me too, Liz. Thanks as always. That was a great conversation.